eldest grandson graduated Binghamton, and Jessica graduated Maryland. So they're all out in the world, such as it is.
Yeah. Are they in the New York? Are they in the New York area?
They're all in New York, three of them. Yeah,
I can go somewhere else.
three of them.
Thanks, Fred.
That's my grandkids.
10 seconds, okay, great.
My kids are here. Stephen's here and Leslie's in Stanford.
Okay, I think we can start. Welcome to the Village of Rybrook Planning Board meeting. Let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for coming. My name is Robert Goodman. I'm Chair of the Planning Board. Also in attendance tonight are my fellow board members John Gerzan, Donald Crum, Scott Mendelson, Matthew Retner, Jeffrey Richmond, and Amy Schoen. Our village attorney is Rob Zitt. Our superintendent of public works is Michael Nowak. Our village planning consultant from Hardesty and Hanover is Sarah Brown. Her colleague Neil Desai is here, and our liaison from the Board of Trustees, David Heiser, is also here. Not in attendance tonight, but always in our thoughts is Tara Orlando, who does everything behind the scene to bring these meetings to the audience of Rybrook, whoever is out there watching us tonight. Yes. That's right. Well, I hear from one of our board members that our ratings are quite low. So we'll have to step it up. We have minutes from May
Yeah.
to 2023. Now, I did not attend that meeting,
Yeah.
but let's
Yeah.
just
I have
adopt
no
it.
comment about it.
For the minutes of May 2023, let's have a motion and a second to adopt them.
Moved.
Second.
Mr. Grzan,
Yes.
Mr. Crum,
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson,
Yes.
Mr. Retner,
Yes.
Mr. Richmond,
Yes.
Ms. Schoen,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
I guess I abstain. I wasn't there.
Well, you gotta be different. Okay.
And just on the minutes, are we up to date on the minutes? We're how far behind are we? Talk to Tara, see if we can get up to date. It would be helpful to be able to look at the previous month's minutes. So, and they should be a lot shorter since we're out of COVID
Right.
stuff. Our agenda tonight, our first matter is 105 Lincoln Avenue. So, sir. A public hearing is scheduled for this matter. It appeared before the zoning board. It was adjourned until next month. So since the applicant is here, I would open up the public hearing tonight and simply adjourn it to next month. Any problem with that? Any problem? No. Okay. Can I have a motion, a second, to open the public hearing?
Moved.
Second.
Mr. Grzan,
Yes.
Mr. Crum,
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson,
Yes.
Mr. Retner,
Yes.
Mr. Richmond,
Yes.
Ms. Schoen,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, sir.
All right, so
What's going on?
I just wanted to update you. I presented the project to the zoning board on Tuesday night of this week.
If you speak into the mic.
Yeah, sorry.
So I presented the design to the zoning board. They were very positive about the design. They just requested that I return next month, and I don't know why I'm not getting, and reduce this area of the patio. Right now, this is encroaching 12 feet into the scenic buffer, so they wanted me to come up with another design where it was less than that. It's a little challenging because I'm trying to catch the existing landing that's here to get steps to go down to the driveway,
Right.
but I'm pretty confident I can come up with something that they'll approve.
Right.
All right.
What was the reason for that they were asking for that?
Setback.
For the setback. So if I show you the site plan,
But do they look into the practicality of it? If you're already given a variance, whether you give it for X feet or X plus 3, don't they look at the practicality of it? If the patio is going to be nicer, but the way you have it, and if you look at the architectural feature, I'm not, I'm not on the zoning board, but it just,
I agree.
it doesn't make sense to me. I'm going to leave it at that, okay?
But is it possible, you think, that, I mean, are you sure that what you're going to do is going to meet the expectations of the zoning board? I mean, I'd hate for you to go back there and they say, no, it's not enough, you need to do it.
No, I think they were favorable and open-minded towards a revision. If you'll allow me, so right now, this exists and this exists. So this front stair exists the way it is. It's going to be rebuilt because it's in grave disrepair.
Right.
So this landing right here, you come up from the driveway now, you land, and then you go up to the front door. I was trying to make it so that there was a kind of a corner style connection also to this patio, because it exists 3 risers down from the existing front. So it made for a nice circulation pattern between this level of the house. This is one of these split ranches where you go up and down. There's a million different levels. So it made kind of a nice connection and created a nice harmony between these 2 levels and between this level and the patio, without having to constantly keep going back into the house to go up and down. The zoning board did not agree with that. So to reduce this by even 1 foot, I lose the connection to the landing, because the landing by code has to be 3 feet wide. So I have to figure out, or even ask the owner, if this connection is vital to them. If it's not, then we will just eliminate it, and I'm sure the zoning board will be happy if I cut this thing in half.
Right. Okay,
But we
well-
lose, to your comment, we'll lose a major design feature there.
But if you cut it in half, how much practicality is there then?
Well, they'll still have the patio to bring out tables and to enjoy, but they just won't have the immediate connection of the patio to the landing and to the driveway.
Well, the zoning board, they have their own jurisdiction and authority, so.
It's interesting, the very next application, where zoning board,
Use the mic, John, sorry.
so I almost feel like, we don't work in sync, even though it's the same village. On the next application, if I read it correctly, they did approve the variance, but it said if the planning board, when they do the site plan approval, does not believe with this, then the variance is null and void. So they can make a ruling and we have to abide for it, but we can make a ruling and they don't have to abide with it. That's the way I see it. But I guess I feel a little slighted, so.
Well, would it be helpful, having said what he said, if the planning board would express their, well, I'm not going to use the word approval, but express how much they like the design?
Robert, do we have any,
I mean, does that hurt or
I mean,
help,
now-
or
I
is it
mean,
even worth saying?
I mean, what happens is that when we refer it to the zoning board, is our opportunity to weigh in on issues that we
Yes.
think we want the zoning board to focus on.
That's a good way of putting it.
Unfortunately, since it's already in their jurisdiction, we don't have any authority anymore to direct them to do anything. It's now in their hands, unless our counselor says otherwise.
No, I don't think there would be a basis for issuing a recommendation. I mean, obviously, the applicant's gonna go back to the ZBA, indicating that the planning board feels a certain way about the application. So I don't think
I don't
there's,
want to get into it.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I'll
I would
do
rather
that.
not.
I won't make any comments about what you guys.
No, I just raised the question, why,
I just
what
think
was
it's
the
an interesting
reasoning? I
question.
mean, I'm not saying, I just took a very quick look at the picture, and I kind of look nice, practical, architecturally attractive.
Well,
And
they
my
loved
only
it
point
also.
was that if you're already going to go and muddy the water by giving the variance, well, it doesn't
they
really,
actually
how
were
much
very
difference does it make if it's 3 feet or 5 feet? That's the only point.
2 feet.
or 2 feet. That's the only point that I have.
How
They
far,
were very complimentary of design. I think their major concern was setting a precedent.
I
How-
thought it looked beautiful.
how
So do
far
I.
away from the edge of the road is the edge of the patio? Roughly from the road?
I'll give you that in a minute.
Thank you.
22.8.
Give me 1 second.
Approval 1.6 feet for him.
22.8.
They were, for him, they gave him approval 1.6 feet.
Yeah.
Supposed
Yeah,
to be
I
30.
mean, it makes no
Yes.
sense, right? None. I'll tell you what sense it makes.
So,
Well, okay.
I think it's supposed to be 35, so we're 12 point something feet within the scenic buffer.
Well, I mean, look, you, get done what you have to get done, and we'll see you next month. Do we need to formally adjourn the public hearing, or it's open, actually, so it'll just continue, right?
I
So the
object
fact
to
that
their
it's kept
ruling.
open means I don't have to provide notice, and nor do I have to post signs.
I have to do the sign
I have to do the sign again.
for December 14th.
Yeah, I guess it's the sign, but you don't have to send notices out.
Having a December
No, no,
meeting?
right.
We never have
Okay.
a December meeting.
All right,
Thank you.
well, best of luck to you.
Thank you. It's interesting just to note, because and I've said this before.
Sorry.
I'm practicing architecture for 36 years. I've been before hundreds of boards. Some boards require zoning board approval before planning board approval. Others require planning board approval before zoning board approval. And I've never understood why this is.
Because they're
Disparity. Why
schizophrenic,
isn't there
that's
a
why.
legality that makes it more consistent? I
Yeah.
don't understand.
Because it doesn't
I,
make any sense.
I mean, I think if the planning board issues an approval and then you don't get any variance approval from the ZBA, that would render the site plan approval sort of not necessarily null, but
No, but
deficient
the
without the
point
variance.
is that the point is that you would think that there would be in sync with all the communities as to who you see first and who you go to second, and who is the authority for in each area. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it seems logical to me that you would want to define what the bulk requirement applications are. I mean, what the
Planning board is.
code actually requires from a property, and then planning is sort of a different issue. I mean, we can't disregard a determination by the zoning board, but we have a lot of leeway in being able to frame other issues relating to planning, whether it's screening or whether it's how things are supposed to be configured, as long as it falls within the zoning parameters. So I guess if you think of planning as sort of like sort of one body of knowledge, and then dealing with the code as another body, then I can see how you would probably want to define, whether the structure meets the code before you start doing all this planning. But it's interesting to me that you've confronted other communities, or you've been in other communities where the planning board defines what makes the determination first, and then it goes to zoning, and
I
if
agree
zoning
with you.
doesn't
I
like
agree
it,
with you
then it goes back to planning.
I agree with the process here, because why would you do one,
Right,
but then the zoning board say no?
exactly.
But I've been in situations where the architectural review board has the ultimate say.
Well,
You're lucky you're here, that's all I can tell you. Maybe not. All right,
Great evening, everybody.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Okay, our second
Yeah,
and,
but I think, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman,
It's a very important point.
independent of this application, but in general, and I think really, you start with the premise, zoning code is a code, and you got to do it to it. And then under the special circumstances, you go to to get the approval for the variance. And I like to believe that there are multiplicity of factors that should be considered and evaluated before you grant that variance. And I feel right now, I have been on this board for many, many years, that zoning board, and I'm not going to badmouth the zoning board because I think they do a wonderful job. I read their reports and I think they're very efficient. I think they're even more efficient than we are to some degree. I do not believe that the planning or the site plan requirements or the planning requirements are duly considered when those variances are evaluated and granted. And that's the only point I'm making.
Well, I mean, to that point, when we make a referral to the zoning board, I believe that there is an opportunity for us to identify for the zoning board issues that the planning board thinks the zoning board should take into consideration. And I think, to your point, John, we're traditionally been a bit short shrift in that.
I think it's a
And
game
that-
of a
and that
chicken
this
of
would
an
be-
egg, a chicken of an egg, what comes first. And I think in many cases, the planning board ought to go ahead, do its homework, and render a ruling, either favorable or unfavorable, and before the permit is issued,
Well,
if there is a variance is required, they have to get the variance.
I
And
agree.
if they don't get it, they don't get it.
I agree with that.
All right? Or the zoning board can go back and refer it back to the planning board for further consideration on the factors that they want to consider. I think we very simply push it off to zoning board too quickly, and I don't think we should be doing that.
well, look, I do think if you take this application as an example, what we should be doing is we did not frame the issues for the zoning board. If, as I recall the meeting last time, we looked upon this plan very favorably. And so in the considerations that we remitted to the zoning board, we should have indicated that the planning board has reviewed this plan, and we think it is an appropriate plan for this, and this reason, and we want you to take that into consideration. And that could have very well had a positive
Some
effect
sway,
on how
yeah.
the zoning board looked at it,
Yeah.
because we would have recommended to them that they look at that issue and given them sort of our insight into the fact that from a planning perspective, this was actually a
I think what got me going on this is the very next application that we are going to have a
coming
look
up.
at it, okay?
Right.
Okay, we took time out, we met the site, and I, to his credit, I think we like the revised plan, and I think it's but yet the zoning board took a totally different approach
Right.
and did totally
Yeah.
differently.
about the application.
Okay.
Look at, okay.
Well,
Yeah,
going back
anyway,
on-
and,
just
I
going,
want to talk about without.
yeah, I mean, I would like to get this gentleman up and present his plan. He's been there patiently, so.
Diesel?
You limpy, what happened?
Now,
I
okay,
hurt my back. It's
Wanna-
every month it's something.
My sympathies.
now, as I understand it, there are a couple of plans.
Okay,
So-
before we get into,
Okay.
however, at the last meeting,
Open the public hearing,
oh,
right?
Oh, yes, yeah. Can I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing on
Moved.
this matter?
Second.
Yes.
okay,
Mr. Grzan, Mr. Crum,
yes,
Mr. Mendelson.
Yes.
Mr. Etner.
Yes.
Mr. Richmond.
Yes.
Ms. Schoen.
Ditto, yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes.
okay. I'm Lou Larizza from Pawling Holdings for 261 North Ridge Street. At our last meeting in front of the board here, I was willing to do whatever you want. I says, you want the hammerhead or do you want the two cars? And I'm in this same situation. I just want to build a garage. I went in front of the zoning board and they says that they preferred the hammerhead, and they said, you watched it already. I'm good with that, and I'm good with the cars on the side. I'm going to catch 22. I'll do whatever you want. And I did mention at the meeting that maybe we have one car to the side and the hammerhead, and everybody's happy. I'll do whatever you want, I'll do. I can't make a decision for you guys. Whatever you want.
Let me ask this, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
If we go ahead
Microphone.
and approve the two parking, open space parking to the side of the garage, and that's, does Mr. Larizza still has to go back to the variance, to the zoning board, or the fact that they granted the 1.6 feet variance and this new parking space would be further away from that, is that sufficient? Does he have to go back to the zoning board?
That's a good question.
No, they told me no.
No. Okay, then we can proceed. Because I think, in my own mind, the hammerhead, it's a to me was the whole thing was the line sight view.
Right.
And by removing the hammerhead and just having the flat ground there with maybe low shrubbery would eliminate my concern that the sight line, whatever you call it, it would not be impaired. By having the hammerhead and having the car parked there, you blocking the view. And that's why I like the second plan much better.
Right, the one that we discussed as the site
yes,
plan.
yes,
Right,
yes.
where you'd have the two cars next to the garage,
I'm
and
not
you'd have
arguing.
this area that
Yes.
you'd be able to back into and move. And that's the safest way of doing it.
Yes.
I'm good either way. I just, like I said, and at the meeting, we went back and forth, and when they were making their determination, I said, you guys forgot the most important thing, the garage. I need the garage. So they says, okay. So whatever you want, I don't, it makes no difference to me.
Okay, the plan that was, there was a plan that was submitted today.
That was the original plan.
That was the
With the
original
hammer,
plan.
yes.
Okay, now what we're talking about that, at least those of us that were on this, at the site visit, not everyone was at the site visit, but John, Don, and I think Matt
Yeah,
maybe
I-
separately.
Yes.
We were at the site and Lou explained the sort of the revised plan. That instead of having a parking, like in that like area where there were two cars and then you'd have the garage, that there would be a place for two cars to be right next to the garage. And then there would be a place for the cars to, basically, if they could back out into sort of into an area, I guess you
And
call it a
then
hammerhead, and
go
turn
forward,
right.
right.
around. And that you would take a certain amount, out of sort of circulation, grass area, whatnot, so that it couldn't be used as a parking lot. Because what's gonna happen is that if you have a parking, you're gonna have like 4 cars there.
That's right.
And people are gonna back out because, so
And you're looking,
Right.
that to me is so incredibly waiting for an accident to happen.
Exactly.
And will happen, because when you come around that curve, it's there, it's right there. And if you don't see that and you're doing X number of miles an hour,
yeah.
bam.
When I was on site, and first off, I want to thank you, Mr. Larizza, you took a lot of time and you answered a lot of questions while I was there, and I appreciate that. One thing which the applicant and I were discussing, the applicant was more than open to, are some safety precautions. One, for example, akin to what they have on Bonwit Road, right around the turn where there's a blind driveway. There's a sign, a hidden driveway sign. The applicant was willing to put something like that, say 30 to 50 feet before the driveway ingress egress. Also, there's no reason that one of those circular mirrors couldn't be hung on the pole that's directly across the street from the driveway. Those both seem to me practical ways of mitigating the danger. Because when I was there, I agree that the driveway seemed terrifying, both to people coming out of it and to anybody driving on the street. So, but regardless, we're going to have a driveway that people will be exiting. Those seem like practical ways to mitigate the danger.
Now, with respect to those, well, first of all, let's talk about the plan that we're going to be talking about. Those members that weren't at the site visit, if you have any questions, maybe you can ask them.
I've been to this, didn't go Sunday, but I've seen it, I know exactly what
Right.
you're talking about.
Because I figure that's the plan that we should be sort of discussing.
I have the plan.
Okay,
I have the hammerhead plan. I don't have the other plan because when I went to the zoning board, they told me the hammerhead plan. I mean, yes, the hammerhead plan.
well,
It's in the record, though. It's in the record.
Yeah,
okay.
I didn't know.
Ultimately, whatever it was that the zoning board had
5 from
done
the bottom.
is going to be subject to the planning board's determination for,
Well, this is where we get them, right?
you guys are putting me in an awkward position.
Modern technology, look at that.
Because I think for the zoning board to recommend the hammerhead, they in effect are doing site plan review.
That,
Which is
you're
not their
right.
function.
No, and you're right.
Well, look,
And
I
it is
think,
not-
I think one thing that continuously came up during the meeting was the concern with the driveway and backing up directly over the grass to go into the road. You know, ultimately, I think the ZBA's concern was safety and to afford this board more of a discretionary
Right.
review in terms of its.
But I think.
But their job is not safety. Their job is code, period. Our job is safety. I think just the reverse.
If
So-
you, pardon me, Mr. Chairman, if I,
Well, every board should
I-
deal
I
with
do
safety.
too.
Yes, I agree with that.
but the other plan, the two garages to the, two parking space to the right of the garage, you can still, the whole idea was that you can still back into those spaces. That you can still back there. If you don't have, if you have the car parked there, you're not gonna back.
I just feel like this is just.
Not only are you not gonna be able to back and make a U-turn and go front with the
Right.
front going out, you're not gonna be able to see it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
If the cars are parked to the side of the garage, you have a much better way, much
Oh,
better
sure.
chance
Absolutely.
of coming out
Right.
and making a turn.
And living through it.
Okay?
that's right,
Right.
that's right.
It's worse,
Yeah.
worse than it looks.
Yeah, I mean,
There's so
look,
little
I
space here.
mean,
He
I
had that
think,
plan with him.
I think there's,
Yeah.
I mean, to the extent that the ZBA approved both variances and the planning board has the discretion now to decide which plan is okay. It still ends up back with us and we make the ultimate plan.
Not only this, by doing this, they basically approving up to a 1.6 feet from the curb,
There's nothing. There's no space to maneuver to,
from the property line, yeah. From the property line, well, I mean, yeah, 1.6.
Yeah. But yeah, look, I think there's a consensus here that the plan you're gonna show
is
us
the one.
is the one
Yeah.
that we are going to consider.
Okay, I'm gonna do the Vanna White thing.
But you don't look like her, Michael.
I was about to say that, but I,
Halloween pass.
So I didn't get to go to the site visit, but I know the site well, and I've actually pulled into the driveway before just to see.
well, yeah.
Um, So, does everybody feel that that Mike's holding now affords for more opportunity to come out front ways?
That's
Yeah.
what I think.
Yeah.
And the thing that's I guess is the most attractive feature to it is that,
But
I
not
mean,
only-
the practicality is that if there's a space, there's gonna be a car.
Right.
And if you have two spaces if you have the garage here, and you have two spaces here, and you have two spaces here, there's a chance that there are gonna be 4 cars there.
Right.
And then they'll figure out how to get them out of the driveway. The plan that seems to be proposed here is that you have the garage, you have two cars here. But then, when they back out, they're backing out into an area that's not a parking space, that can't be used as a parking space because it's not big enough for a parking space, but it's big enough to turn around.
Right.
And so it'll discourage the owners to be from using that as a parking space. They'll use it as a turnaround. And that's what
Be
it
used
should
as
be
a
used for.
But my major concern is being able to come out onto the street safe way. And there are 2 factors here. One is coming with the front wheel going out first.
Right.
And second, even with the front wheel going out first, if you look to the left and you don't see the cars coming,
That's right.
you are still in a danger. By not having the hammerhead there,
Yeah,
you have a
right.
much better sight
That's
view.
true, that's true too.
Okay?
Absolutely, yeah, that's true too.
Just to play devil's advocate, because I think I like the parking places next to the garage also, having been at the site. Oh, sorry. Just to play devil's advocate, because I think I prefer the parking spots next to the garage, having been on the site. But if everybody, I'm going to say a lot of people, not me personally, but a lot of people use their garage for storage. If you end up with 2 cars parked in front of the garage and, nose in, and then maybe a 3rd or 4th car parked to the side, how do people turn around then?
They don't.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be easier if there was the hammerhead then, in that situation, of people not using the garage for
I
parking?
guess the
They're going
thing
to use
is,
hammerhead for parking.
I guess the thing is that
Oh,
a garage.
So
is
you
a-
don't really know. You don't know what's gonna happen.
That's
Well,
true.
you can create incentives. You can make it more difficult for there to be like 4 or 5 parking spaces there as opposed to 3. Now, would a creative owner do things differently? Yeah, they would probably try to get away with it, and it's very true. People may use their garage for, but that's not how we conceive of what a garage is to be used for. If that's how they use it,
All right,
we can't
Here's-
necessarily
Here's
anticipate
a
that.
question, here's a question. Supposing you have delivery trucks coming to that home, where do they park?
Well, right now, they're just pulling up on Ridge
On Ridge.
and getting out.
Yeah.
Because I saw it.
On a
That
curb?
happens
On every
all
house,
day.
every house up to Ridge Street.
I know where
Yeah,
it's
every
straight
house.
away they do that, but
Every
not on a
house.
curb.
Right.
Sorry.
And you're right. I mean, when I pulled out of the driveway, if there were cars to my immediate left, it would be a much more dangerous pulling out, because I could see, without cars there, I could see the curve around Ridge Street. So I could see in pulling out what cars were coming at a pretty decent distance, sight distance.
We cut all the trees down, Mike,
Right.
and I went there. I
Yeah.
cut it from
Right.
my property here all the way to the property that I
Yeah.
built the new homes. I
I mean, it's
cleaned it
pretty,
all out.
it's about as clear as even the stone wall is very, very low. It
The
doesn't
wall is
impede-
lower than the road.
Right, so,
If you install the hammerhead, we just did that about a couple of months ago. We approved the hammerhead, was meant for the turning, and it's used for parking. If you have a hammerhead there, 2 cars will park there just about all the times. If you have the cars on the side of the garage and you have an apron road, little wider apron coming to those 2 outdoor parking spaces, people coming out of the garage are gonna back into that apron because there is no car there at any time, and they're gonna come out on the street.
right.
I will work for this plan. I'm gonna be very simple. I will not support the hammerhead, and I have nothing else to
But
say.
again, I'm not arguing with you. Just tell me which one you want.
I
Okay,
just told you, I will support, I told you I like
Okay,
this
then-
plan.
then I'll build
I
that
will
one.
support this plan. I will not support the hammerhead, and we can,
Okay.
you guys can discuss.
I
all
think,
you
I
want.
think Sarah
I
has
gave you
Okay.
something to say.
okay, all right.
No, I do. I didn't want to interrupt.
Okay, go ahead.
So prior to them going to the ZBA, the revised plan that was submitted to our office for review was this plan.
Okay.
And this was the plan that our review was based on. And we think this is a safer alternative than the hammerhead that was there.
All right, so even the professionals.
That's
agree.
great to know.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay,
Excellent to know.
Thank you.
all right, so,
We've been
So
tra-
I'm
we've
gonna
been trained well
build
by
this
you.
plan.
that's right.
Yes.
Okay,
So
that's
let's,
all.
so we have a resolution.
Well, going back to the safety ideas that I brought up.
Oh, a question about that. Can that actually be done? We did have I recall a quick discussion on this, that this is a state road.
It is a village road. We just took the road over recently.
Okay.
The signage, there are parameters under the MUTCD code that would have to apply. I would have to look at the book to tell you exactly if a blind driveway or something like that could be installed. I have to check that. I
Can
cannot
you
say.
say slow hidden driveway, not just hidden driveway?
I have to check what the
Okay.
parameters are, because the state is very, well, not just the state, the federal guidelines are pretty restrictive on just putting non-necessary signs up. So I have to look at the book. The question about putting a mirror, we don't own the poles. That's private property, so we're not supposed to be allowing people to put anything on poles. So that's a no, because they're owned by Con Ed or by Verizon.
But the,
But they have easements for that probably allow.
Not for ancillary items. Their easements are for other utilities and for access to the poles, but not for homeowners to install. Right, in this case, if you want to put a mirror on the pole,
Right.
you have to get the permission from Con Ed or from Verizon to put it, it's their property. It's their pole.
Yeah.
They
I wonder
own
if
it.
I wonder
So
if
it's
there's
no different than
something
someone
in those
having a tree there. You can't put a mirror on someone's tree just because it's across the street, the same way a village tree, you would have to get permission from a village board to put a mirror on a village tree.
But as far as the signage is concerned, that's
I have to look
something
at the MUTCD code on that.
to see what, now, would it be within the, it would be within the village's jurisdiction?
It'll be within the right-of-way of the village, and the board should put that in the resolution if they want to pursue it based on what is in the MUTCD code.
We can put it in.
and the
we can
spacing.
put it in.
I have no problem because I would put it behind the guardrail, so it wouldn't affect anybody.
Right.
Sarah, are there any other safety, because I think Matt brings up a good point, maybe we could think a little bit outside the box. Are there any other safety elements we could suggest?
Other than signage, I don't think there's really, I've been thinking about it while you're having the conversation. I don't think there's anything else that we can do. I think, again, I'll just reiterate, we can't predict every situation that happens, but the two spaces next to the garage make that area in front of the garage big enough that cars can turn around, even if there's others. And I'm afraid with the situation of the hammerhead, that even if there's storage in the garage, we can't prevent somebody from storing things in their garage, but if we give them more room to make the maneuver, I think they'll pull out, especially after they start using the driveway.
Yeah, we can enforce the speed limit. Unfortunately, nobody does it. But that's the most practical thing to do. At 35 miles, we have no problem, but nobody does 35 miles.
Only other thing I want to point out is that the sightline, the distances that have been reviewed by F.P. Clark's office, or Hardesty and Hanover now, those were approved with the original approval. So those, I believe, were in excess of the required distances of the MUTCD code. So those are, more than adequate from that perspective, but I'm not disagreeing. A car coming up the road is a car coming up the road. But based on codes and standards in the engineering industry, those distances do comply with the requirements.
Now, would that mean that a sign can be put up, or that discourages the prospect of a sign being put up?
Listen, I'm all for safety. I have to look at what the book specifically says. There are over 200 different signs and situations or more. Each one is unique to the book. So
If you-
I could look into it, and based on what we find in the book, we can install it. If the book says no, then it's going to be no.
Okay.
If the book says no, in the event that the book says no, and experience begins to teach us that it should say yes, I hope that does not come to pass. What is involved in getting that changed to a yes?
I cannot change that. That's a federal guideline. That's a statute.
Can we appeal somewhere to,
There are no appeals that I'm aware of the MUTCD code. Those are the standards. The same way that the standards from either ANSI, ASHRAE, ASTM, they are standards. The same way the fire code is the fire code. You can't appeal it.
But the entity that owns the road, and if that entity establishes so that it is indeed a safety condition, whether it's a lack of line sight or traffic or curb or whatnot, they can put a sign.
Correct.
They can put a
However,
traffic sign.
correct. However, that was not one of the recommendations in the original approval of the site. That was not in the original approval.
Neither
So
was
that
the
was not
garage.
determined
I
at the
have no
time that
problem
it was
putting
needed.
Let's say,
sign.
that my point is, the
Doesn't
village
make
right
any
now
sense.
owns the road, right? I mean, you're responsible for the maintenance of the road. Are you responsible to control the traffic and the traffic conditions on the road? And if you, in your own estimation or recommendation by consultant, somebody decide that yes, we need some sort of a traffic sign at this particular location, on this particular road, can you do it?
Typically, if a situation was happening and came to light, that would be referred to the Traffic Commission for their review. Okay, and they would then,
That's what I'm
Well, we
asking.
have a
they would
traffic
review
commission recommended
but
to
once
traffic, yeah.
again, it still comes down to, does the book allow it? They may recommend it, but if the book does not allow it, then we cannot install it.
Well, look, and I
Doesn't
think,
make
I
any
So,
I-
and originally, the approval of this project did not require any additional signage.
What happens if I put the sign on my property and then somebody has to tell me to take it down.
Well, that can happen.
Think about that. I put up a sign. I give you my word, I'll put a sign. I want safety. It's not a big deal for me to put up a sign. It's not.
Let's say, but
It's
you
too
know,
practical, like you said.
And you run into trouble with the scenic road overlay.
I have a problem with that. If everybody does, let's say you put a stop sign on your property.
No,
Do
I
we?
don't.
But let's be practical. Do we? Do we comply with your stop sign? Yeah, I don't think the
No, we
idea
don't
of you.
comply with the
I don't
35
believe
mile
that
an
the
hour zone,
idea
right?
of the owner putting the sign on their own property to control the traffic in front of their house.
Well, I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help.
So would the
Try to
board,
help.
so would the board be amicable to a condition in the resolution that Mr. Larizza, myself, Hardesty, Hanover, look at the consideration of placing
the
that kind of a sign?
to the
and-
extent
and
that
to the
it's-
extent
To the
possible and
extent that it's
allowable, we
feasible,
will,
right, to the extent that
then
it's
that's fine.
feasible.
Are you okay with that, Mr. Larizza?
I also would like to put a 30 feet by 20 feet last development sign so I get more business.
Then I'll send you back to zoning for a variance.
My,
Okay, I mean,
course.
I mean, I think that we have a consensus that this application can
I
be
would rather
adopted.
than have that in the recommendation, I would rather have something that the traffic, what we have, a traffic commission or something? What, in the village, is a traffic committee, traffic commission, what we call it?
Traffic commission.
That they, you know, let them take a look and pass a judgment.
Well, I mean, if, it sounds to me that this is
I don't
not
think it's
something that they
necessary
would
for
do.
them to look at it.
That the traffic commission, I don't even know what the traffic commission is.
This is
but I
not a
assume-
regulatory sign.
Right.
Commission has been in existence since the village has been.
Yeah. it's the
And they
first time I
do,
heard
they're
of it.
very effective. They are very effective.
Yeah,
Yes, they are.
if
I
I-
was a member years ago.
If I can, I think the first,
And they do recommend stop
first-
signs.
the first
and-
stop is
and,
with Mike.
They can do a
Well,
lot.
well,
But I
let's-
don't think it's necessary. I think it's self-evident.
Well, let's see, let's see
Speaking
how
of
it's.
the traffic signs, who do I lobby or whose office do I picket to insist that we install a traffic light at the intersection of Betsy Brown and King Street? Did any of you ever did any of you ever
Yeah.
try to go there at
Yes,
8 o'clock in the
at
morning
least three-
and make the
This
left-hand
is-
turn?
This
Yeah,
is my,
at least
this is
3 or
my
4 times a
suggestion.
week,
I
right.
don't- can
Betsy
we-
Brown
can-
and and King Street
Yeah.
is not Rybrook's
Yeah,
jurisdiction,
what I'd like to
as
do
Portchester.
is I would
King
like,
Street is the
is
state
I
road.
would like to move this along so that Mr. Larizza has an evening in front of the TV set watching the football game. Right, and I'd like to
You know what
talk
I'm
about the
talking about.
comprehensive plan, and then we can talk about this. Let's have a motion in a second. Well, first of all, is anyone in the public, virtually or not, have anything to say to this application?
Yeah, the one in the back row there.
There. I don't see him, her. Okay, have a motion in a second to close the public hearing.
Moved.
Second.
Mr. Grzan,
Yes.
Mr. Crum,
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson,
Yes.
Mr. Rettner,
Yes.
Mr. Richmond,
Yes.
Ms. Schoen,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes. And, Rob, we have a resolution?
yeah, this is going to be short and sweet. Maybe not. Whereas the applicant submitted an application for approval of a site plan and wetland permit for the proposed construction of an attached garage and parking area at the property located at 261 North Ridge Street. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Rybrook Planning Board hereby approves the site plan and wetlands permit for the proposed construction of same, subject to the conditions set forth in the written resolution and as updated by tomorrow morning to include those conditions.
Okay, so you can send me a draft of that.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, what did I miss? The wetland permit is because the garage is within the wetlands,
Technically, it is, even though it's
even
30.
though it's about 30 feet up
That
in
is-
the air.
That is correct.
I give up.
It's a technicality. It's located within the 100-foot buffer, but there's a dramatic drop-off.
That's right.
Do we need to identify the plan that we're approving since there's?
I was about, yeah.
The resolution is based on that plan because that was the plan that I had reviewed.
Okay, all right, just make sure of that. All right,
You laugh.
okay, unless there's any discussion to be had on the resolution, can I have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution?
Moved.
Second.
Mr. Grzan,
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Crum?
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson?
Yes.
Mr. Retner?
Yes.
Mr. Richmond?
Yes.
Ms. Schoen?
Yes.
Chairman Goodman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Just one question. Now, if I ever go back to the zoning board, they're gonna deny me, no matter what.
No.
You don't null and void now.
Okay.
You don't need
Thank you very much.
You're
Bye
Mr.
now.
Larizza, I just want to thank you for offering us opportunity to visit that.
It's-
I drive by that site every single day, and my compliments to you. I think you did a wonderful, wonderful
I do
job
too.
on all 4 homes.
Yeah.
And God bless you.
Well, I tried the best, and when I came in front of the board from the very beginning, I said that the 2 quote-unquote moderate income homes will look like single-family homes. I didn't make them look like, you have to remember, I've been doing this for Westchester County and the state for 40 years now. I built 600 units throughout Westchester, and this is my home here. I mean, Rybrook, I live in Portchester, but to me, it's all the same because I grew up here. And you could see all the landscapes.
That's the thing.
Mike and I,
Oh,
we
beautiful.
planted 140 trees and sod and a sprinkler system
Yeah.
on all the properties.
It's landscaped beautifully, just
Thank you.
really beautifully. It's a
Thank you
pleasure.
very, very
Yeah.
much.
Well, keep
And
it
I'm
up a
sure
little.
I'll find another site. I would like to do another site in Rybrook for senior housing,
Oh, bless you.
like I did at the saw pit. I built senior housing there, 62 and over. But we'll find something.
Okay.
Thank you
Well,
very
anyway,
much.
thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you for your time.
It's not independent, it's assisted living. Well, it's
Okay,
both. It's all-
okay,
it's
we'll
all
put
three.
the traffic thing on, that will be our second agenda item, some discussion. Comprehensive plan. Among the discussion items, the one that we actually have some input tonight on is public engagement. It was 10 years ago that the 2014 comprehensive plan sort of was developed. Neil, you've had some experience recently with public engagement and comprehensive plans and different ways of doing that. So I'm giving the floor to you about the importance of public engagement and how that has sort of helped shape the plans that you've dealt with. Yeah.
Before Neil goes, can I just make a
Yeah. Oh, just one point, John.
I read this very quickly, and I think you did a nice job.
Yeah,
Mr.
Rob, this is really good.
But I think and I may have not expressed my views, adequately at the last meeting, but I still believe that what we need to, before we embark on revising this or whatever we want to do with it, I think we need to decide, what do we want to be? What kind of community we want to be going forward?
I think,
And
right.
and I think that question needs to be answered before you start doing it.
And
I
you
think
know,
I think comprehensive plan, as I said last week, is a wonderful document. Wonderful document. Now, is it outdated, or does is it reflecting the community that we want to be in 10 years, 15 years from now? That's what we need to establish.
I agree, John, and that's why I had brought up after the last discussion towards the end and why I brought Neil with me, because I think public outreach is a big thing, and you may decide to recommend that there be a community-wide survey to decide, is the comprehensive plan that you have right now in line with the thoughts of the community, or have thoughts changed and feelings
Yeah.
changed?
Right. And I think there was also a point that was discussed, I don't know who raised it, but the idea that different parts of the village may have very different views of what development should be for them. If they're in a more commercial district, they may have a different view than
That's right.
people in the north of the village. And
There-
that the comprehensive plan may actually not be one comprehensive plan. It may be a couple of sub-plans dealing with development in different parts of the village, because the residents, indicate that there are certain needs that are not maybe universally needed, but are needed in their area. Just a thought. But anyway, Neil, why don't you go ahead?
Yes, sorry. So Neil Desai from Hardesty in Hanover. Thank you for inviting me to be here. So I cobbled together some slides from, some presentations that we developed when we've tried to pursue comprehensive plans in other communities. And I think just before I touch on public engagement, I wanted to touch on comprehensive plans, because the way comprehensive plans have done in the past is, I guess I'll put it in a more active manner. Communities need and deserve a more effective approach at doing comprehensive plans, because they in this day and age, there's you have to focus on priorities, and how do you identify priorities? A lot of comprehensive plans treat every subject as very important, as they don't really have a sense of priority when you look through a traditional comprehensive plan. Like, what is the most important thing that this village needs to focus on? What is that? And a lot of times a comprehensive plan won't tell you that. So right now there's a range, but I'm going to call something called the traditional approach, and a more contemporary approach, which is something that I've been trying to apply in other communities, for the reason being is that I think communities need to have an effective comprehensive plan that isn't just a compendium of existing conditions, which there's a lot of time spent on comprehensive plans often in the past on documenting existing conditions, including community history. History is absolutely important, but is the comprehensive place a place where you start off with history from the town from, the 17th century onward? I think there's other vehicles that would be great for that. Again, not saying that history is not important, but for a comprehensive plan, I think a more contemporary approach is to focus things on the present and the future, and also to focus on the topics that matter most. So almost like in journalism, it would be called the inverted pyramid. You start with the most important things first, and those topics, and then you kind of go down to the things which maybe aren't priorities or aren't as critical to spend time on. Because you're talking about something that you're usually hire a consultant for to produce, and you want the consultant to spend the most time on the topics that are most critical. In New York State, there are recommendations of what you should do in a comprehensive plan. So it's much more possible to do that approach. In other states, it's much more regimented. In Connecticut and New Jersey, the types of sections and topics you have to cover in a comprehensive plan, so it's a little bit more difficult to do that there. I think, just going on in terms of demographics, when you see demographics in the plan, it's a lot of, again, existing conditions, showing future things, but really what's important is showing the key data points that matter in the plan, and visually showing what the trends are. Changes over time is very critical, because you can show what 2020 is, but where did it come from? So it's really important that the data points you have also have a trend component and how things have changed. Public engagement, which I'm going to talk about it in just a little bit of depth. I only have like a few slides, so I'm just kind of going through this because I think it's really important just to set the stage for just comprehensive, our general approach to comprehensive plans, and to see how you respond to that. Usually there's a default structure to comprehensive plans. You've seen it all: land use, transportation, but I think, as I just heard right now, when you're looking at maybe there's a need to structure them in a more flexible manner, where you're talking about I'm not familiar with the different sections of town right now, but I hope to be in the future. But maybe the certain part of town needs a special focus, and maybe that becomes a section, and within that you talk about land use, transportation, because there may be things that are very different in that part of town. So a flexible structure is something that I put into the contemporary approach. It doesn't necessarily have to be land use, transportation, housing, and that doesn't necessarily have to be separated in that way. There can be other ways to break out a structure for the comprehensive plan. I think having precise goals, you often see very generic, very broad goals that could apply to any community in a comprehensive plan, and a more the approach that I'd like to take is something that's more precise about their goals, and usually it's goals that are based on what the priorities are in a community, and I'll talk about how we investigate what those priorities are. Other things, simple put, making them user-friendly. You want the community to be able to actually spend time looking at them, make it user-friendly, especially online. Have a concise executive summary. If it's usually it's a 100, 200-page document, having a concise executive summary that captures the critical points of the comp plan, so the average person who may not have the time to look through a deep document or interest can get a sense of what the community is prioritizing for the next 10 years or so. So I just wanted to touch on that aspect of how comprehensive plans we're kind of trying to adapt them to the future, and not to say that there's traditional approach or contemporary approach, but there's elements of each that are important. But moving forward into comprehensive plans in modern times.
Neil,
Yes.
how are you finding the reception of the contemporary approach to be received amongst towns and villages? And are you finding there to be like any types of patterns amongst the towns and villages that seem to be using a more contemporary approach?
So I think this is something that I started doing on comprehensive plans in Mamaroneck. So I think, but that just got adopted in September. And so, interestingly enough, I always used to say, I would never submit a comprehensive plan for an award, for the same year that it was prepared, because how do you know if it's a great document? It may be a great document in theory because of whatever's in there, but is it a great document? To me, a great comprehensive plan would be something that is handy. It becomes a handy for whatever purposes, whatever committees and boards. It becomes something that they actually utilize to make decisions or to help them make decisions. So that's what I want to see happen with Mamaroneck. Because what I did with Mamaroneck is I took the there's a lot of, I don't want to I didn't put it in this presentation, but you'll see some of the you'll see some of the ways I designed the document, so it's much more user friendly to use and that sort of thing. But it comes with an implementation table that's a separate document. Because these are often PDFs, you can't go in there and unless you copy and paste things. But what it is, I created a Word document which has an implementation table. It has every single recommendation in the comp plan is in this Word document, and it's something I gave the village planner and the village manager. The last item I gave them when the plan was finished, I said, this is the implementation tables, and I don't have a picture of it on here, but this is an editable Word document. This is, we took a first cut at, what the priority of each of the strategies are. We labeled them as priority, midterm, short term. Short term meaning within 1 year or two, midterm within 3 or 4 years, long term after 5 years. And so we did that for every recommendation. We set a priority, put some dollar signs in terms of whether it requires operational budget, capital budget, and so I can tell you that I think it's a plan that they're going to utilize, but I want to follow up and with Mamaroneck in 6 months, in a year, to see where are you with that and how is the comprehensive plan being used. They appreciated, they liked it, they loved what they adopted. And that's exciting to hear, but I want to see how it moves forward into the future, and if it, is, really becomes something that's people get behind, not just the leadership and the board of trustees, but also members of the public who are engaged in the community as well. Because right up front we have the priority goals stated. Flood protection is number one.
It's all over.
Number two is bikes, walkability, bikes and pedestrians. It goes down, and so it sets up very clearly in the first thing. These are the priority goals, 1 through 7, and so it's very clear about that. And so, very good question. Thanks. So,
but Neil, listening to what you're saying, it makes a lot of sense. However, when you give the implementation and time frame and the dollars, it almost implies that you already have a map, a road map as to what this comprehensive plan would cover. And it just, so you have defined the parameters. This is what I said before, what we want to do. Are we going to stay at single family homes? Are we going to go into a district where we're going to have a multifamily, high rise, commercial, or whatnot? Once you have that, then I can see how you can have these implementation plans, because if you develop a one district which is not consistent with the single family homes, well, then there may be many other factors that you have to implement or develop in terms of infrastructure that the village is going to have to do and plan for it and finance, if you wish.
right.
It's not only developer, but there is also something that's going to have to be done on the part of the village.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, so with respect to public engagement, I'd say a couple of things have kind of changed. I think it's getting the message out early to people. There's competing message throughout the community for all kinds of things, attention for people. So on the right is just a sheet that we've created that it kind of embodies some of the principles that we use when creating a public engagement campaign, because it is a campaign. It's not just engaging public. Okay, we're doing 2 workshops, but it's a campaign from start to finish. Developing a logo, coming up with the name. The one on the left is the village of Ridgewood in New Jersey. Their master plan. We created a logo in conjunction with the steering committee called Our Village, Our Future, and that became the name of the project. And I think that's just a lot more interesting than saying, Ridgewood's master plan, which happens to be the tagline, but I think something more compelling for the public, so they get a sense of, okay, this is interesting. Let me think about this. We want to capture their attention. That's an important thing, and treat it as a campaign. So you really have to have a schedule, which in any campaign you want to have a schedule which, whenever there's a meeting, whenever there's a public event, you want to make sure you have your media consulted. You want to make sure you have your email go out to the community. You want to make sure you have the different venues, the different avenues through which you communicate, whether it's the town website. Like I said, this is just some collection of images from another place. Facebook. You want to look at different social media and spread the image widely because, like, for example, Instagram is as far as a younger population, trying to get the attention of the younger folks in the community, in any community, trying to make sure you're using the social media that they might use. So you use a variety of different approaches to get attention based on what you think is going to be most effective to reach out to the greatest number of people. I think. If I go to the next slide, I think in terms of getting people involved, I think you want to provide as many different ways for people to get involved as possible that they're comfortable with. Some people are very inclined and open to doing online engagement because it's simple. They can sit there and provide their feedback. There's on the left is an example of a mapping tool we use where people can point to specific locations in the town, upload a picture, write a description. I think the one in the middle there, the woman there with the big idea, that's reaching what I call it reaching in to people. So having a presence at a local festival or a place where a lot of people spend time, like a grocery store. So reaching people where they are at instead of setting up a meeting. Well, you would have meetings as well, but mix it in with reaching people where they're at, where they congregate, so they kind of don't expect it, and that's great. So you get a lot of people and interested. You have a question? Sure.
I just want to make a comment that I agree that's all well and good, but I think you also have to make and be very cognizant of the fact that there is still a large number of people, I'm sure everybody's aware, that don't have computers or that are not computer literate or can't function with a smartphone. Those people have to be factored in right from the get-go. And we can't assume that everybody is tech smart. We just can't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a point. Absolutely, I agree with that. And so, reaching people in person is a great way to bridge that, so that there's no technology required.
Which would mean public meetings.
Having cars, and of course, we would definitely meetings are there, absolutely part of the package as well. Also, focus groups. Whether it's this one we did was with high school students because we wanted to get a sense of. We definitely knew that we were reaching people in their mid 40s and above, but the younger generation. So you make it a point to have sessions, whether it could be a group of seniors, maybe at a senior facility or whatnot. So you kind of tailor the groups that you meet with to where you think that the need is for added engagement. A
lot of this was done when it was initially done.
That's great. That's good to hear. Yeah, and it hasn't been that long. 10 years. 2014.
It's been a huge generational change in the village.
Exactly.
In population turnover.
How much do communities typically spend on creating these community plans and this public engagement campaign, or in the case of Rybrook, updating a comprehensive plan?
The ranges that we see that are comprehensive plans in all the states that we do this in is we've actually written this down because that's a question we got. It's usually you see 50,000 to 200,000, and that's talking about communities within. I would say once you start getting into 100,000 or more population, then that it varies. It may be a little larger, but I'm talking about like the kind of the median where we work between the the 15s, the 30s, the 40, 50,000 people. That's the kind of budgets we've seen, and then
But
each of them has
that's
a
for
different.
the entire comp plan. That's not just,
Oh, and that's
that's
the
not the
entire
public
comprehensive
engagement plan. That's the
which-
whole process through.
That's the whole process with the public engagement.
So in a case like Rybrook where there may be an update and a public campaign, like what do you estimate that would cost?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think well, so the range is when you get to the 50,000 point. Let me start from there. I can't give you an answer. I wanted to give you an answer at Rybrook now, but 50,000 is usually when there's a community that wants guidance on a comprehensive plan because they want to have a role in producing it themselves. So you often have committees that will be working with you in a process to actually write the comprehensive plan because that's a lot smaller amount. Mamaronac's was 105,000. That was the total budget for Mamaroneck, and that's includes the public engagement. And I think the Mamaroneck it started in 2017, and it had a lot of disruptions and because of COVID, the Hurricane Ida, but we then restarted. So, but it ended up the total budget was 105,000, which was a workable budget for Mamaroneck. And so I don't know. I
They're
think if
also a much bigger community than we are.
they're a much bigger community population wise, but we always with population I think there are some generalities you can say about populations and budgets, but the time to take to engage people can be certainly longer if you depending on for example you're looking at Islip, Long Island, which has 30 different hamlets. I think the public engagement for a community that big and complicated is going to be much more time consuming than a smaller community with maybe one or two hamlets and that
When
sort
you
of thing.
say Mamaroneck, you talking about the town, or are you
Sorry,
talking
the
about
village,
the village?
the village of Mamaroneck. Yeah,
Big,
village of
the big
Mamaroneck.
difference. Yeah.
So that's the answer to that. So another thing that's important to know about, especially if you're applying for a grant, a New York State DOS grant.
I was about to say, are there
Yeah.
grants, are there funds available to help municipalities fund comprehensive plan projects?
Yeah, Sarah, do you want to say more about that? Or?
Yeah, I can. So New York State has a Smart Growth Grant, which are comprehensive plan grants that are, they were due this year for 2024 funding. It was due at the end of July. So you're actually in a good timing position right now that you're thinking about this because the applications open back up in, I'm going to say May, and they run through July of 2024, and then you would have funding after that. What we have,
What conditions are placed on the grant?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, John.
Usually when somebody gives you money, there are some conditions that you have to follow.
Yeah. Usually comprehensive plan committee rules and people that they want to see. They want to see public engagement. Environmental justice is a big category now. Neil's been dealing with that on some federally funded projects that we're working on. There is an environmental justice community in Rybrook, so you would have to include that type of outreach as well.
So yeah, the DOS, as far as the zoning, I'm more comfortable with right now working on the one with the zoning grant. I don't know if it's different from the comp plan grant or they're both the same, but essentially I think it's important to look at what to do this type of analysis which is very quickly. You go to a website and you see what New York State DEC designates as potential environmental justice areas, and that's usually based on some combination of.
When you say environmental justice, mean many things to many different people, but is that kind of build green, emissions, and all of that? Yeah.
Well, it's mostly it deals very specifically with the fact that like this says it's a low income and minority populations have often been overlooked and disadvantaged in terms of location of environmental facilities such as solid waste things, and how they've borne a disproportionate burden in terms of having certain uses within their communities, whether it's a highway, trash facilities, and so there's been a renewed, starting at the federal level, there's been a renewed look and an emphasis on environmental justice and ensuring that communities that have them, and especially on federally funded projects, DOT projects, that's where you really have to do a more thorough analysis of and this is just simply look up a map and these are your community. This is showing, where these potential environmental justice areas are. They call them potential because I think they're still finalizing the criteria of what disadvantaged means.
In my own mind,
Yeah.
knowing the Rybrook and just a small town and the location, when you say environmental justice, what could you invent in terms of environmental justice when it comes to Rybrook?
Well, in terms of what I was just talking about facilities, I think what they're doing is they're not looking, when they map these areas, they're not looking at where facilities are located or that. They're looking simply at the mix of demographics, income, race composition, and it's based simply put on that. That's how they're defining disadvantage is through those factors and mapping those areas. And so, in the Bronx, we're working on Cross Bronx Expressway public engagement, and virtually all the entire Bronx is the demographics are designated as quote. I guess more important is the word disadvantaged. Environmental justice, it comes into play is just when in the Bronx there's a Cross Bronx Expressway that runs through it, and the asthma rates amongst the people are some of the highest in the country. So you can associate the Bronx with knowledge of those factors. As far as in Rybrook, I don't know if there actually may be any physical facilities there which contribute to that, but I think it's just solely based on the fact based on demographics. There may not be anything there. In Mamaroneck, it so happens that the pink areas, which is not on this map, but in Mamaroneck it's the area called the Flats. It's the low-lying area where it floods most. That's where most of the people live.
As I listen to you, I think you kind of talking more in terms of like we were going to create a comprehensive plan for a revision 0. Well, we have a revision 0. We are looking for revision 1, revision 2, revision 3, and I think this is great, but I don't know how much of this is applicable to what is it that we are trying to do.
Well, this is the public engagement. So this is,
I
regardless of what you're doing,
Right.
an update or a new plan, the public engagement is going to be absolutely critical
I
in
think
this
this
way.
is just one factor that is now being looked at
Yeah,
in
and
developing comprehensive plans. It's not something that may be applicable to us at all.
Right.
It sounds to me like that the fund sources, the federal government and the state, they are making a priori determinations as certain communities that are going to get certain types of funds because they are environmentally disadvantaged. We may qualify for other types of funds, but we may not qualify for that.
Well,
Especially
we are
about the-
qualifying for flood relief, and
That's right.
that's clearly a problem in this
Absolutely
village.
right.
Yes.
Right.
And like
That's our primary
I think Michael,
infrastructure
in one
problem.
of our previous educational sessions, we had the gentleman from FEMA, talking
Right.
about what FEMA, and that of course is huge. I mean, we don't have, we have a major flood issue
Right.
too. And so things like discounts on insurance, or whether or not there's insurance that will cover certain types of homes built in wetlands areas.
Being part of the community rating system.
Exactly.
That's
I
all
mean,
that
those
things.
are the things. It may not be environmental justice,
Yeah.
but it could be, flood relief, mitigation, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's just one piece, and I think that's just more of like maybe that should have been I think, I wanted to bring that up, but I think it's in the context of the New York State grant, if
Right,
that's something you want to pursue. I think it's just one thing just to remember that, is put as part of the application process,
Right.
is that, and they may already mention that in the application process, but I do have a couple of slides on community surveys because they are a great tool for quantitative and qualitative data. Some couple of key principles is just keeping them short to 5 to 7 minutes, which is obvious to try to keep surveys brief so you get more people to get more attention in people's busy lives. They have a lot of things to do. I think you want to include some key demographic questions, whether it's age range, neighborhood, location. That's really important. I think you're curious. I think you said earlier about what there may be different priorities in different parts of the village. So that's really important to track. So when you have that, you can cross-tabulate responses, or certain people who live in the northern part of the village having different responses than people in the southern part of the village. Response rates, don't be impressed. We've had mailing sent out to every single household in Ridgewood, the village of Ridgewood, New Jersey, and we got about a 20% rate, which is very good for a survey. That's very
that's
good.
great.
That's a very good response rate. So
Definitely is.
I think so. I think the age, demographic, the neighborhood questions are also good for determining, how representative are these surveys. So 20% of the population, but how representative are they in terms of location? Or they're balanced in terms of the responses? So those are things you can look at to make sure your survey, the responses are, make sure your responses to see what they're like, and to see beyond just the survey what more work what might need to do to try to be more representative. If the survey results are maybe skewed in terms of a certain demographic, you can do that. But this is part of the Ridgewood's visioning process for their master plan, and we started looking at what their top priorities are into the future, and affordability and aging in place were number one in terms of their areas that were most concerned. And so this is like kind of looking at, all right, what are they most happy with? Arts and entertainment, recreation programs, community facility. Their library is amazing. It doesn't need to change. So you start to see like, okay, where is the attention that needs to go in any future planning effort. And so something like this can start to help you get a sense of the direction that people are taking. And the qualitative results, I apologize if you can't read that, but the qualitative answers that people give, you always want to give room for short answers as well as just multiple choice or rankings, because you start to get a really rich array of feedback, and you start to get especially as a consultant that doesn't know a community, we're doing it, and even as yourselves, maybe as village residents, you really get a sense of where, when you put all these qualitative comments together, you get a sense of what kind of some of the major trend tensions are. In Ridgewood, it was about, the common theme that ran through it was about this town that loves their tradition, but we're kind of afraid to change anything. And that's kind of one of the general themes that came out of the qualitative input. So, but we know we need to move forward, but there's a lot of hesitation to change what we have that's already here.
I'm surprised that the number one priority is not the dollars, finance, the taxes, cost of living. I think that would be, to me, that would be most like.
Yeah, I mean, that actually comes out of.
Well, there is
well-
like socioeconomic issues,
Yeah.
affordability.
Where is that?
On the top one.
Okay.
So
okay.
taxes is big, but
It's also business and economic.
we tried to
development.
organize this in terms of comprehensive plan topics as well. So taxes is something that bridges a lot of different topics. When you look at what business and economic development is like, what is it, number 4? They have a thriving downtown, but I think they realize that there are vacant storefronts that need to be worked at, that need to be filled, and there's a lot of competition, but that's also part of our tax base we need to improve. So, like that, we organize the categories in terms of. We tried to look at those more of topics that are in a comprehensive plan. You don't usually have a taxes chapter. It's something which is a kind of outcome of a lot of the planning measures you take. So, but there is another slide which I didn't have in here, which shows in big letters taxes as being a concern.
Was the concept of spending hundreds of thousands of taxpayer money well received by the community for, I mean, 100,000's on this project, well received?
Nobody. There was no. No, it was. There was no comments or about that. Well, I think probably the village didn't. Their last time they had their master plan really done was in like 1970. They had, they showed me the thing. So it had been such a long time. They needed to do this. The budget for this. So this was the visioning process that we did only. The next step came after that was the master plan process. So this community survey resulted in what's called the visioning report, and that included recommendations of how the master plan could be set up, and that was $88,000. That was the budget we proposed based on their RFP. We put together an $88,000 proposal for that, for their whole visioning process.
And do you think they got a real return on their investment, and how did that manifest itself?
Well, the vision plan was adopted. There was, there wasn't any dissension in terms of we disagree with the findings. And I guess I would say, since we were part of the visioning process, they started the master plan process within 6 months. I didn't pursue it because I joined another company, so at the time I was a different company. And they completed the master plan, and so I guess I guess in terms of what it was meant to do, it was meant to be the visioning that set up the stage for the master plan. So from that sense, there was not much of a delay from the vision plan process, getting all this together, to the master plan. The master plan probably took about 12 to 16 months, though, I think, in that process. So it was a little bit longer than the visioning process because we were mostly focused
You
on.
say you moved on, so you don't know how well it's been implemented, or
No, so I don't know how the master plan, the resulting document, which was adopted probably this was 2019, the visioning process, and then the master plan was probably adopted in 2021 or 2022. So I don't know. So yeah, I can stop. I apologize if you feel that way.
no. I'm just looking that, and I'm trying to see the bar chart, and my vision is not the best, but I can read some lines, and I say how much of that, if we were to superimpose the similar bar chart for the village of Rybrook, how would it line up with it?
Well, this is
I
a
know
more.
that I saw, for example, the education was done in the middle of the table. I'm
Right.
sure for us would be very high.
Right. So, I mean, I'm just demonstrating here, how we try to start collecting information about community input and priorities through a survey. This is, and so this is in Mamaroneck. We asked a more pointed question, what are the topics that should be the top priorities? And so that's how we started arriving at that. It was very clear: flood protection, roads, bridges, new development and zoning, businesses. So that's how we kind of started getting a real strong sense in a quantified way of what the priorities are and what they should be in the comprehensive plan. And this is turning out very small on the screen, so I apologize for that. And then again, kind of importantly, you want to check that data. So we did a look at different neighborhoods and how they responded in priorities as well. And you could see some variations and get a sense.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Mamaroneck's a town that has a ton of flooding. It's well known for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do they really need a survey to know that is a priority? Wouldn't that be something that the mayor and their board would know that, because people were,
We hear it every day,
Right.
every meeting.
So yes, without a doubt. I mean, I went into the meeting, but here's the thing: we know what the top two priorities might be, but what about the rest? We know flooding is going to be number one. I mean, that's without saying. Hurricane Ida, really destroyed the village. That goes without saying. But what about the rest? How much time? How much attention should we, or other topics? You can't just spend all your money on flood protection, where there's a whole village you have to run with other things. And the second thing that came out of it really was about the roads and pedestrian safety and walkability, and that's kind of the second priority. Traffic
The
congestion
density of
itself
traffic,
wasn't the
that's right.
thing. It was more pedestrian safety, bikeability for Mamaroneck specifically. So So yeah, some of this, and that's a good check. I mean, when I went to the meeting, I said, is this a surprise that flood protection is number one? No, you don't have to do the survey, but you do want to get a sense of what are the other things that also need attention in the community.
But it's also the purpose of these plans is to help guide development.
That's right.
And the advantage of these plans is that if they're done right, they're bottom up. They're not an executive or specialized group of people telling a population what their priorities are.
Right.
The plan is a reflection of the public will. And because the plan is a reflection of the public will, it gives leaders an ability to guide development in a much more aggressive way, because they have a document that manifests what the priorities of their population are. It gives them cover when they make development decisions that may be controversial, that they're doing it in accordance with the priorities of the comprehensive plan. And it's also a way of changing the dynamics of negotiations with developers that want to come in and do something that isn't consistent with what the priorities of the public are. So I think that you intuitively may know all the issues that a community may have to deal with or what their priorities should be, but where is that information coming from? Where's that determination coming from? It's coming from people on top. It's not coming from other parts of the community. It's not coming from people that may not have otherwise a voice in the community. And
Isn't it the job of the leaders to be so in touch with the community that they know this stuff?
Well, but sometimes that's a difficult thing to do. I mean, people only have.
It's also
so
an
much.
expensive thing to take
Like
this route to do it.
Rybrook's not building a shopping center. Like, we're not building
That's
another
right.
shopping center. We're not building another big commercial development. So it's kind of very unique.
I think we are essentially built out.
Yep.
And there are about 3-4 properties within the village that are gonna make a difference. And I think, and I keep coming back, I think we really, the board, not us, with our support, that we can give them some input or feedback that if they ask from us, they need to decide what do we want to do with these 3 or 4. We can talk in circles, but it boils down to the very simple fact. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties that over the next 20 years are going to be developed here. You're not going to start tearing the single family homes and building something. And what do you want to do on these properties? And maybe we should go out and have a community reach out to see. If I was a board member or if I was a mayor, I would probably want to know from the community. I said, okay, folks, there is 30, 40 acres. What do we want to do here?
But we don't own that property.
Yeah, but the developer needs to follow our code. Okay, we don't own it, but you can't just come in just because you own the property, do whatever you want with it. You still have to follow the law, zoning.
Like if you want to develop a property in a way where there's a high degree of density, that's one way you can go, and you can decide, no, you want a lot of open space, and you want parks, and you want a lot of concessions to the community. I mean, even with, I think a distinction that is being made, I think among my colleagues here, is that there's a comprehensive plan, and then there is, how should we make certain decisions about development? And it could very well be that we can actually identify the areas of the village where there are a lot of questions, unanswered questions about how to develop those properties. And it may not require a comprehensive plan to come to those decisions, but we still run into the same, call it a knowledge gap. We don't know what the community wants. We don't know whether they want pools, bowling alleys, movie houses, open space, parkland, or whatnot. And so,
But
maybe.
I think we all know what we want. We want good schools, we want open space, we want no traffic, and we want low taxes. Unfortunately, those things don't line up together.
Don't line up.
That's in the land of
Three them
utopia,
line up,
right?
but the fourth one doesn't.
And
So it has to be
storm drains that are
Some
enlarged.
drains, so there will be no
Big
flow.
ones,
All
big
right.
ones.
So the fourth one, it's the money. It boils down to the money. All right, and you need to kind of have a balancing act.
But there's a lot of chicken and eggs. For instance, if the demographics show you that school population is going to drop off pretty radically, then why are we going to be, then we would want to say encourage, family housing. If it looks like the schools are going to get overrun and the school district is saying, no, we're going to have to build new schools, that doesn't make sense. We don't want a lot of school age kids. Then that sort of pushes you more towards, age limits and things like that. So there is a lot of chicken and eggs here.
That's right.
And
true.
that's where I think, to Rob's point, you get into this thing, like, you think like, well, the Board of Trustees must know all this, but do they know? Is our school age population likely to increase in the next 10 years or decrease? Does anybody know?
I think if
Maybe the school district knows.
I'm the one of the opinion. And I think you guys tried to prove me that I was wrong the last board meeting. I felt all along that our school population is increasing constantly, and you guys told me no, that's not the case.
Well, that's the point. That's the point. You can have different, if you don't actually know what it is, then you can have all sorts of opinions about anything. Just for the hell of it, when it came to sort of the priorities of things, the first one was updating demographic data. I can't see how you can make any decision about anything without knowing what the demographics of the village are, and they're not what they were in 2014.
I think if you survey the people that have bought the homes within the last 3, 4, 5 years, why did you move to Rybrook?
Because of the schools.
I would say that number one by
It's the
far
schools.
is the school system.
Absolutely.
All right, people moving here because of good school system.
Certainly not recreation.
We have no.
Because we
don't
have very little.
We don't have golf courses. We don't have pools. We don't have
Right.
libraries. We have no churches. We have no synagogues.
Come on, we have
Then
all
why
that
are we
in
moving
great,
here?
we have all that in great proximity. We have
Yeah.
like dozens of golf
That's-
courses.
But that's not the point. That isn't the point. People, even now, I listen to, I cited pickleball as one of the examples. People saying, why doesn't this village have a pickleball court? Well, that's a darn good question. Why don't we? We've got tennis courts. Why don't we take one of them and make it a pickleball? These are little tiny things, but one
Doesn't
thing
the rec
leads to
department
another.
do that?
Yeah, but
They
that's,
have a pickleball league.
right. Well, this is the thing.
The rec department has pickleball.
Those are sorts of issues that aren't like development
No.
issues. Those may be quality of life issues.
Yes,
I
but
mean, we would
quality,
like more of this and more of
development,
that.
you can't separate development and quality of life. You cannot.
Yeah, but
I
you
don't
can't,
think.
but you're gonna have a comprehensive plan, you're gonna spend a lot of money in a comprehensive
I
plan
don't
that
think
says
we
we
should
need
be
more
doing
pickleball
this.
courts to make people
I
feel better.
could
That
not
is
agree
not-
with you
I-
more.
I couldn't
What?
agree with you.
I
I think
couldn't-
that's where my.
I
don't
think
think
this
we
is
should
a
be-
terrible use
I
of
really-
it.
this
We're
is a-
talking about taxpayer money, I
We're
think this is a
trying,
terrible use of it.
in my mind, we should be looking at our current plan, isolate from that, get precise with that, as to the specifics of that plan, which have worked, are not working, and why aren't they, and what should we be doing for transportation, whatever,
Amen.
for property development, specifically downtown, the Rye Ridge Shopping Center, our big downtown. We did start. There is some commercial development and residential development. Bowman Avenue was supposed to start to become commercial. A lot of Westchester Avenue, the residents have turned into businesses. So some of those things are happening. This is talking about, it sounds to me anyway, just that we're starting from ground zero. And I don't think this community will go from ground zero. I don't think they want
there
any.
is a need to do it.
Right, no, I don't
There's
either.
No need for it.
We're
No.
too small.
development sites
We're
left.
what, 8,000 or 9,000 people?
We're built.
I think it's getting a little misconstrued what we were trying to do. We were trying to introduce to you what it's been 10 years, so there has been some differences in how this
Yes.
is. And what I heard from you last month was that you don't know if you're hearing from everybody in the community, because let's face it, it's usually the same people who come out to everything, and those are really the opinions you're getting. So the reason that I wanted Neil to come was to show you some of the other methods that we have used, because yes, public meetings are very important because there is a certain group of people that always come to those meetings. But then there's another group of people who maybe work in the city and they don't get here in time to come to those type of meetings, but they all have an iPad that they go on in the evening. So they have the availability to go on a map that could say, hey, I don't like this. Or they could look at a survey that has certain elements of your existing plan and say, no, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's the direction Rybrook should go in. So I think I think we kind of got off course of what we were trying to do with this. What I heard from you is we need to know the demographics now. It's been 10 years. We don't truly know everyone who lives in the village. Let's find out who they are, because we think we know the direction. This is a policy document. It's not a specific planning, land use document or transportation document. It's a policy document. Let's look at what the people are thinking now, the mindset they're in, what their priorities are, and how does that match to our existing plan. And maybe this is the existing plan is fine and it covers it. Maybe we've gone in before and changed some land use chapters because, this property got developed. It doesn't make sense anymore. What we have in the comp plan, we're going to update this section. Or maybe what we thought we were going to do with this 10 years ago isn't the type, like office buildings. Nobody's building office buildings anymore. So I think that's what we were trying to do here, to show you the different options, the different ways, what we've found successful in other communities, and then maybe you can use that as your guiding. But I don't think that we should be starting from scratch with your comprehensive plan.
Everything we do has a ripple effect. And one thing, if you talk to the people, and I do, I love to talk. The strangers, I love to talk. But if you talk to people in the village, people my age, they feel squeezed out. Squeezed out because of what? Taxes, lack of senior facilities, lack of transportation, and so on and so on. We all want education. Everybody younger people move here because of education. Well, we floated 2 bonds in the last 2-3 years. Taxes have increased, 10-15%, property taxes. Many senior citizens have a difficult time, and they are being squeezed out or moved out.
Right.
Do we want to do that?
And that's something that you would look at in your policy document.
Which this probably
Was
probably isn't going to affect anyways. Like that's I think we've got to remember, and that's only for the one of the 2 schools that we have, right? So I think that's got to be remembered here.
Yeah, we also lost 2 very major
Yes.
producers with the Hilton and Durrell.
But look, I think that it's, Amy, I think you're right, but I think to get to the point where we know whether our plan is effective or not comes down to understanding the demographics.
Yes,
And
agreed.
understanding and doing some public engagement. If it's not
Yeah.
complete, but some public,
that's
and
it.
then line up our findings against the comprehensive plan
completely,
and
right.
see whether or not we're sort of on target or completely off base. Because if the overwhelming, up until now, yes, everyone comes to Rybrook for the education. Up until now. I don't know if it's still now. It may be up until now. Maybe the demographics have changed so that you really have more senior people here. And they want lower taxes and different types of facilities. And actually, Matt, you made a very interesting point last time when you were talking about New Rochelle, which is that we have been waiting, and John, you've complained about this on the other side. Developers come in and they have a project, and then we bend over backwards we make a priori decision that this is a good project, and then we bend over backwards and make all sorts of exceptions to the code in order to make those projects work. Well, what we should be doing is identifying projects that we want, and then using RFPs and going out into the marketplace and saying, we want to be able to do this. This is our budget. Can you do this for us? And be very proactive in developing those facilities that the village wants, which I don't know whether we've been doing that in the past or not, but it seems to me a proactive way of promoting development that at least I'm not familiar with are being able to do. Maybe we can't do it because most of that budget is education budget, so we actually don't have a lot of money to play with. But then, you know, we can make concessions on our code. At that point, if we really want a project, and the main thing is we can give them certain advantages on our code or other things, then we can make those concessions if it's a project that we want. But yeah, I think updating demographic data, some public engagement are probably the two main things, preliminary things that need to be done to evaluate the plan, and that may be, you know, and all these other things are sort of like.
I
Is it-
agree with that. By the time you finish that, and you know, I keep coming back, there is such a limited amount of space to develop. And by the time we go through all of this process, maybe some of these developments would already be in the process. And what are we doing?
And John, I was just thinking the same thing, because we can go through and do a great job with community outreach and what do you guys want, and then these projects get built and the community's like, wait,
What did we do?
why did we do this? You didn't give us anything. And I think there's a high likelihood of that because of Rybrook, because of what we have available. It's not
Well, then
much.
maybe.
And are these properties village-owned properties or privately owned properties?
Private. And that's the other thing. I mean, they're private-owned properties. By the time the code would change and
Well, then maybe,
Also-
then go ahead, Matt.
We're not elected. We all have the best interest of the village at heart. We're volunteering our time, and we're all proud to do that. But when you talk about what people want and the will of the people, I mean, the board is elected to have that in mind. I guess we could certainly have a demographic study, and demographic study is a heck of a lot cheaper than this mechanism. But in terms of public outreach, I really don't think it's appropriate for a planning board. We're here to review plans, and
We're just making a recommendation. We're not.
You would be just making a
Board did
recommendation
that
on your
with-
findings.
With the crime issue and with the police. If you remember, a couple of years ago, were you part of that board? When the public survey went out to everybody and everybody's input was asked with police, with the public, the police persona with the public, how to make things better, what did the public want? The board has done those kinds of public outreach. This and it is. I agree with that point that you're making, that it is an elected board and that they should be cognizant and involved and wanting to make themselves aware of all of that. I definitely agree with that. We're trying to make a recommendation to them. They are the people that can make it happen. We cannot.
We can just encourage them to do it. And if they think it's a reasonable recommendation, you know, they do respect our opinion. If we think that the demographic survey needs to be done, I'm sure I'll be talking to, you know, Chris Bradbury about, you know, the mechanics of doing that and what it would cost and whether it's within budget and that sort of thing. But there'll be a discussion about it. So they do take our recommendations seriously. But I think what all of you seem to be saying is that the focus has got to be much more precise.
Yes.
That maybe, and again, this is all part of the recommendations. We don't have to make, we can say we have 3 recommendations. You know, we need X, we need Y, and we need to evaluate what the village wants in terms of dealing with certain types of property that
Yeah,
may
but I
come into development.
I think maybe, and I'm not trying to be an obstructionist, but I saw one of the points in the plan was, you know, not limit, but think about before we build more senior housing in the village. again, we did that in the last 10 years, right? So like, obviously, so what?
Well, look, at senior housing is, if I recall the Kingswood or Kingsfield, they actually came in and say, your comprehensive plan encourages our type of development. So they were in fact doing exactly what we wanted them to do, which up to a point.
No.
In the first 2 pages
No.
of that comprehensive plan, I believe it said something to the effect of, maybe I don't have it in front of me, but it was something to either limiting or.
Well, it was a balancing act between density and more of.
I read it as no more senior housing, and then what happened?
Because there's really no senior housing in the village per se. There is none.
But it's funny because when you talk about demand
Except the
for
atria.
it, I mean, I think Belfair, was originally supposed to be senior housing.
No,
if
it
I'm not
wasn't.
mistaken.
No, it
No, I
wasn't.
thought
No.
that. No, not in terms of.
Well, the
once
atria-
they came to.
Yeah,
the
no,
town.
I was on the
but
planning
I think
board then. No.
the developers. No, I'm wrong about that.
No.
I thought they had an
Spectrum
original
developed, right,
idea.
no.
The atria was being developed at the
All right,
same
my
time.
mistake.
And so there was a sort of, policies that would encourage the use of Belfair facilities for, people
Okay.
at the atria,
It's
but.
supposed to be a communal.
Okay,
Development.
I like to know how much
why we
money
waste
is the village gonna be losing
Yeah.
on the tax revenue on the 900 King Street.
Yeah.
By us going ahead and, debating that project for years, 3 or 4 years, if I recall, before we finally get the approval. And now it's in the limbo, and God knows what's gonna happen there. If anything is built, it's not gonna be built overnight. So how much money did we lose in the
Yeah,
tax
yeah.
revenue? And I guess this is my point, is we wanna know what kind of projects do we wanna developers to develop? All right?
Well,
Was-
so if you go.
Why is 900 King Street, why is it not going forward? Is it the inventory, is it the cost, is it the wrong thing for the wrong time, wrong place? I don't know,
It's probably a combination of
Right.
all of those things.
but I don't know, but I'm sure it has an impact on the tax revenue, significant,
Definitely,
all right?
definitely.
Okay,
Okay,
What's going on-
I'm not even gonna ask
the
you
two
about.
hotels, the two hotels that were probably big tax revenues for the school and the village, are in limbo right now, if
Well,
I understand.
No, Doral is not in limbo.
I mean,
think
it's not active.
no, it isn't, and
Okay.
it's not planned as
Is Hilton
a
closed, or
generous,
can I reserve a room in the Hilton now?
accessible community for one and all. It's from originally what I had heard, and I don't know if this is correct, is that it was going to be a very upscale kind of.
Is
property.
Hilton officially closed as a hotel? Yes, so I'm sure that is in some sort of a limbo right now in terms of the tax.
What we've gotten is an oral concept.
Okay, but we're not collecting the taxes as though it was a hotel, no, are we?
Well, it's not open.
Okay, so.
But like with Hilton, right? We can't put out an RFP for that. They own it. Like the Hilton owns it.
That's
We're
right.
not going to change their.
That's right.
No, the way New Rochelle did it was they changed their zoning in downtown.
That's right.
To allow for a different type of project. They allowed for X number of apartments to be built and up
With
to X
retail
amount
stores.
of height. Yes, but they're actually all still vacant.
Yeah.
But, and they allowed for height up to, I think it's 28 stories. And by doing that, you got developers buying out smaller property owners at astronomical prices because now those properties are worth so much more because they're developable. So you really can kind of steer what's developed on private property by doing that. And I'm sure that the folks who own some of those properties would be delighted with that because you're gonna, kind of arbitrarily inflate the value of their
Why
property.
go to New Rochelle? Go to next door here to Portchester, drive
Sure,
down
it's
the
the
main,
same
drive down the
concept.
main street.
Same concept.
You see what's going up? all right?
No, New Rochelle is a much bigger place than Portchester.
It might be bigger, but the
But much
concept
more.
is.
It's
And-
small,
and-
and
It's-
small properties
I-
are
I'm
being
not,
bought
I'm not
out.
equating the scale, I'm
Yeah.
saying the concept's similar.
All right?
But we're not going to
You
build.
can compare Stanford and White
I would
Plains.
guess that the community doesn't want more shopping strips in Rhinebeck.
I'm just gonna, I'm gonna guess.
Or restaurant.
Or restaurants, because we are so centrally somebody else said it, like, we're so centrally located around everything.
But take the Hilton property. Is the Hilton property, this is just a question, is it zoned as a PUD? Some of our most successful new things in the last 20 years in Rybrook have been PUDs. Belfair, there was a bunch of them. Is Arbor's part of the PUD? In fact, yeah, Kings,
Yes, yeah.
right,
Arbors is PUD.
Arbor's is part of that office park that's being redeveloped or is in limbo being redeveloped. I mean, the PUDs developers seem to like the mixed use concept, right? Because they can do a lot, and that gives us, the community, a lot of flexibility. Is Hilton locked into just being a hotel or commercial only?
I don't think so.
I mean, that's.
Richard, isn't that right?
Once again, we got a very vague oral
From the Hilton too?
the owner of Hilton,
Mm.
and we've got no follow-up.
No, I'm just saying this is sort of a factual question. As a zoning thing, is that Hilton property a PUD property or is it a commercial property?
Honestly, I do not know. Michael, maybe you know.
I believe it's an H1 zone, I believe.
I think it is.
H2, however, an applicant has the right to request a zoning amendment. So as part of an application, a applicant has the right to request a rezoning of an area, and it's been done in certain areas of the village where applicants have come here and changed from either a C1 zone to a H1 zone or something like that. But that's up to the applicant.
Well, I guess I was comparing and contrasting to some degree. Doral Arrowwood is a PUD. So by definition, whatever the developer or the private developer proposes there is going to have the freedom to be a mixed use. They're going to have the ability to do commercial, whether it be a hotel or something else, apartments, condos, whatever it is, it's going, open space. It's going to have that flexibility versus being locked into some zoning concept.
I think if you read the original comprehensive plan, I think that it was written so beautifully, and there was certain recommendation with regard to some of these office OBs and
That's right.
CPs, and there was even suggestion whether you should eliminate some, you should combine them. And I think this is what we should be looking at it right now. And forget about trying to write a brand new comprehensive plan.
You're saying read it and see what we're doing.
No. Let's revise those sections that we feel would control the development that's at hand right now. And it would reflect what the village wants to do going forward. All right? I think it's a very simple fact.
I do.
Very
yeah.
simple, straightforward.
Are we allowed to do that?
But if you wanted, go and
No,
try
we
to-
can't. We can only recommend that to the.
No, but I mean, is the village allowed to, is that viewed as prejudicial to say, there's 3 open tracks, so we're gonna just focus on that? Or,
Well, I mean,
would a new developer say, hey,
no.
why are you focusing on my property? Why aren't you looking at the whole village?
No, the village has a right
No,
to establish and to
We
study zoning.
rezoned the Blind Brook Country
Correct,
Club
the Blind Brook was
because-
rezoned.
and that was just within the village purview. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best thing, that we did, and that was a recommendation of the comprehensive plan, the
Right.
step that was implemented.
Right.
Okay,
That's
good.
right.
All right, folks. I suggest maybe we should do it joint the next session. Let's jointly go through right here, take an hour and let's jointly look at 3 or 4 sections of the plan and said, let's focus on this. And let's recommend to the Board of Trustees, these are the sections that we should revise and implement. That's what I would recommend. I am not into, let's not reinvent the globe.
You're
We
talking
know what the globe
geographic,
is.
you're saying geographic areas.
No, sections as in sections of the report.
Sections of the report.
But the report was set up, transportation, recreation.
No.
Whatever.
It's a specific areas.
Not really.
People that wrote the comprehensive plan, they knew what they were doing. They focused on the specific areas.
It was topical. It was zoning.
So what part are you recommending to work on?
Specific areas.
What specific area are you recommending?
OBs, CPs,
So you're talking about the zoning.
zoning.
So
yes.
he's talking about zoning.
Zoning,
Land use and
yes.
development chapter would
Yes,
be probably
yes,
the chapter
yes,
you want to look
yes,
at.
yes. Yes.
And what do other members feel? Are there other chapters that other members may feel should be looked at? I'm just trying to.
I think that one of my favorite topics, flood control. I think it's going to be, now I'm guessing, but I'm guessing that big parts of the community care a lot about flood control is maybe not the right word, but flood mitigation. And I think a lot has changed, and I think new development that we do can impact it, both
But-
positively and negatively.
But through changes in the zoning that have been taking place over the last 10, 15 years, I think we have managed to improve the flood control. And Mike, I don't want to speak for you, but I think there are improvements, and we can continue making those improvements. You're not going to change all of a sudden, divert the Blind Brook flowing west or north. It's still going to flow
but
south. All
If
right?
you look at many of the flood mitigation plans, Doral-Hourwood is a pivotal property in making, and also SUNY Purchase, as it turns out,
Right.
the campus.
And across the
That is a
street.
key location in the Blind Brook tributary system, and it's open area that can be either make flooding worse downstream or better, depending on how it's
And
developed.
when we did the Kingsbridge development, I think the fact that there were ponds were created and as part of the development definitely improved the flooding down the stream.
I mean,
Right.
look, maybe the way to.
I think we need to end this
Maybe the way,
meeting.
yeah, I think my sense is that maybe
too
the
much.
way to do this
What?
is, first of all, I think it would benefit the village to have an updated demographic survey within
Circles here.
budget, because I don't really know how the village has changed over the last 10 years. I don't know whether the trends that were identified in the original comprehensive plan hold. I don't know how many new school children are coming into the village. I don't know how many seniors are in this village. I don't know. And if we don't know, then it's very difficult to make a lot of decisions about what's going on. I agree also that maybe the thing to do is to identify areas of the village which are sort of key to our development. Either land, it could be commercially owned, but land that could change climate and flood relating conditions because of the size of the property, and how ideally we would like to develop those properties, and see whether or not, from that point on, do we need public engagement? Do we need to focus on maybe changes in the zoning code in order to deal with these things? And really sort of focus things much more precisely on what our issues are and how we may be able to address them. I mean, if there's anything that came out tonight, it's that starting de novo on a comprehensive plan based on survey and public engagement may be just way too much for what we actually need. And I think John, has correctly pointed out that we essentially built out, except for certain properties that are sort of in a more ambiguous state. But those properties are significant enough to affect the dynamics of the village, and maybe we should focus on how we would want to develop those properties.
I like the point of demographic. I'd like to know how many more people have aged like I did over the last 25 years. Okay. However, and we keep talking about the school population. If you look at the last 10, 15 years, the middle school, practically the size has been doubled. Not the elementary school. The size of the school has been doubled. I just walked through it. A beautiful facility. We have a brand new middle school. We have made massive improvements to the high school. Why have we done all of that and spent all of that money and flooded all of the bonds and basically raised the property taxes if the school population has not increased?
But that's the school board.
Yeah, yes.
Like that,
But that's the whole point. I made that point before. We cannot work independently of the school board. School boards basically control 60-80% of the budget, of the village budget.
Right.
All right? But sometimes they have very little to say in the development. But when they want to expand, they don't come back to us
Well, I
and
bet
say,
David
where are
would
we
have-
going to get the
David,
taxes?
I
David,
bet
you're
David-
here. He knows more about the school
Yeah.
board than anyone in the world. What is, I have,
only two words to say to you all.
what?
Sarah will know what I'm talking about. Bill James.
What?
Bill James.
Bill James, that's a
Bill
name.
James, approximately 50 years ago, introduced the concept of sabermetrics into basic.
I was gonna say Moneyball.
It's sabermetrics.
Yeah.
You need accurate information.
Right.
And rather than anecdotally say, well, the only reason people move here is from schools, you need to find out why people move here. Stop making assumptions.
Right.
You may be right, but you also may be wrong. And as far as the school money spent, it's the school budget. They represent a significant portion of our overall tax structure, but the village does not spend money on the schools.
That's right.
But that village, the school money is coming from the development. That's where that's where the taxes are coming from.
No, it's not. Because I think David would probably agree, and I don't know, but the school board is probably one of the thorns in your side with development.
Well, it certainly has made 900 King difficult,
Right.
Yeah.
because they have to approve any pilot.
All the improvements in the school
And the
infrastructure.
increase in taxes haven't because
I have a stupid question,
of the
David.
mistakes that were made in the building
How did it
process with the
evolve
schools.
that basically the school board runs its own little fiefdom independently
Well, school
of the,
boards do.
political apparatus of the village? How did it evolve that way?
That's way before my time.
That's the state education law. That you can't get politically involved with the village, with any entity, any political entity. They are their own fiefdom.
And so
everywhere.
you can't control how they spend their money.
That's right.
The question is, how do they get their money?
They get their money by
From us.
basically
Collecting taxes.
collecting taxes.
And how do we change the impact the taxes? By what we build and what we develop or what we do not develop.
That is true.
Okay?
That is true.
If you use, let's
But
say
the increase in the taxes that we're paying now are directly related to the building project of the high school and the elementary
But if
school.
we decide-
Where a lot of things, we wouldn't be paying what we're paying now if it had gone smoothly.
If we decide that we want to encourage a certain development, the school board has an overwhelming say in whether or not that gets developed right away or not. So,
I mean,
They
what
have a
is,
say, but they don't control.
Right.
I mean, what happens, for instance, if whatever demographic survey comes out with that there's really a declining school population, which means that that the school doesn't need as much in the way of resources. And I mean, can they continue to increase their own budget by less and less? They want to float a bond and it comes up for a
Their
referendum.
budget gets approved every year.
What
doesn't-
just happened with the budget? People were screaming about the fact that we were being charged more because of mistakes. They wanted more transparency. The public wanted more transparency. Those mistakes hopefully have been corrected, and the way forward is different. Now you're getting, if you get blasts from the school, you're getting very clear statements about exactly what's going on there. But they don't want to reduce their curriculum, or they want more.
But Rob,
And now the budget did not pass the first time
Right.
for in a very long time,
Yeah, go ahead.
because they,
to answer your question,
Yes.
if the statistics show that the school population is in fact decreasing, when a developer like 900 King comes in and says, we want the age to be 55,
right,
and we pushed them up to 62 because we didn't want more school children, maybe we wouldn't have done that.
Right.
If we didn't care
right,
how many
right,
kids ended up
Right.
in the school system.
yeah,
Correct.
And so that's why you need the statistical information
Right.
as opposed to anecdotal information.
Right.
yeah.
Agreed.
But
Which you
he
wouldn't
made
think would
that
be that
point,
hard
Rob
to
made
get,
that
because
point.
the census was just completed. A lot of this stuff is in the census data.
what about, doesn't the
does
school district,
enrollment projections.
Right, so a lot of this stuff could be, you would think, inexpensively put together.
I would think they have it,
Yeah.
the school board.
But that's the point you were making, Rob. I mean, about the development and knowing why it's important, why the demographics are important.
Well, I just think it's the only,
Yeah.
it's what David said. I mean,
Yeah.
how can you
You
make
can't.
any
I don't think
decisions
you
unless
can.
you know what's
Right.
actually going on.
And please understand that the school is just one piece of the decision-making
Right.
process.
Right.
We were also concerned about traffic on the King Street corridor. 55-year-olds are more likely to be driving with more cars than older people. Speaking for myself, because I am one of them, I know I don't drive to work anymore. When I was younger, I would be on that King Street corridor getting to the Portchester train station. And so it really, those are all the factors.
And do you believe that if you had a little more specific data on school population, that the outcome on the King Street project would have been different?
I don't know the answer to that, John, but what I say is that having more information can't hurt. It's a lot like chicken soup. It just can't.
I also feel, you know, again, I'm coming from a different mind thought. If you don't want to make a decision and live by it, do a survey. Again, I come from a different line of thought, okay, but that's, I'm sorry, but that's how I feel.
So you're saying to know what the demographics are is irrelevant to any decision that we would make?
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. Guys, we keep saying how small we village are. I'm here 36 years. I like to believe that I think I know pretty much the village and you know, in general, what type of village we are, what kind of people are moving in, what kind of, and I still maintain people are moving in here for the school systems, and unfortunately, we are squeezing out our senior citizens like myself. Okay.
John, I've been here for 34 years. My problem is that we all, and I blame all of us, we're very north-centric. I don't know if people are moving into the southern end of the village purely for the school system. I don't know. I'm not friendly with a lot of those people. I've never really discussed it with them.
See, my problem is that I'm here a little longer than you, maybe a couple more years. I fell in love with the place. And even though if I cannot afford to pay taxes, I'm not going to move out because it's just nice place to live. And I'm not going to move out.
That's why I'm still here.
Well, anyway.
Longer than all of you.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's been a good discussion. What we're going to do is we're going to revise our, recommendations, maybe limit them a little bit more. And I think maybe what would be helpful is why don't the three of us sort of brainstorm, revise this, and then maybe what we'll do is we'll circulate that draft to you all and collect whatever additional comments you have, and then let's have a final discussion on
Is it
this.
possible to use your magical skill of writing and not saying what I really want to say? That we really want to focus on the properties that are coming up for the development, and therefore we really should be looking at some of the zoning areas.
Oh, I can certainly say exactly that. That's fine.
I love don't get me wrong, I love to know how many people live in the village, what their age is, how many kids. It's always nice to know. The historical facts, they never hurt you.
Well,
All right?
look,
But after you have all of that, you're still gonna have to make a decision. And
Well,
if
yeah,
you
but
feel that all you need now is the demographic data to make a decision, by all means go for it.
I mean, look, I don't think it's just that. I think that you've made a lot of good points, as well as your colleagues, about focusing the issue of development on certain types of things. I think that makes sense. I think another thing that came out of this discussion is that we have a comprehensive plan. Let's see whether or not the expectations have lined up with what's the actuality is lined up with the goals. That may require, some more analysis. But I mean, I think it's generally sort of narrowing the focus of what sort of recommendations we're making instead of, oh, we need a new comprehensive plan, or we need a extensive public engagement to figure out what we intuitively think we know, is to sort of focus on development in a much more, precision-oriented way. I think that makes an awful lot of sense. I mean, the reason why I've been very keen on demographics is because when I was going through the comprehensive plan and it did have a whole section on demographics, and I started really like looking at it more carefully and sort of trying to analyze what those statistics meant, it sort of was very interesting, the nuances that those statistics brought out, because it's not just that you get a bunch of statistics. I mean, you need people that understand what these numbers mean in order to derive sort of an explanation as to, you know, what do these trends actually mean? What does it mean to see certain figures go up and certain figures go down? I think it is helpful in policy making to understand sort of what the profile of our village is. And it may affect what we decide to do, it may not, but the idea that we don't know bothers me, because there may be something obvious that we, if we're on target, if there's something obvious that is completely counterintuitive to what we think, we need to know that. Otherwise, we're going to pursue a path that either people don't want or is not going to be.
I think that we learned a lot from what Neil presented us tonight, and I think we learned that we don't need as broad a look-see as perhaps we were heading in the direction of.
Right.
And I think that was very helpful, and I thank you for that, because it did help to focus my thinking even more. And I agree with you. I think that that's the way we should go.
I think it would be also worthwhile to do a check on the recommendations and implementations. Which steps were undertaken so far, and which are outstanding recommendation or implementation steps that have not been done? And then maybe the question begs itself, why have they not been done? And that may answer some of the reasons that how you want to move forward.
Right. Well, I mean,
Is it the lack of money, lack of time, or lack of knowledge, or lack of information?
When we first got it, that was what I understood was to be the task. What of these sections have we done? What haven't we done, and why? What could we be doing that better?
Yeah.
That's what I did, and that's the approach I took with it.
yeah.
But I think it's too big.
Well, I've had a problem with that sort of approach because I don't really know how much has been accomplished. I
Well-
don't even know where to start. I mean, if I'm reading this stuff and it talks about, we should be zoning, I mean, again, we're making recommendations to the board. We're not coming to a conclusion on this. So, if we want there to be an analysis on certain sections of the comprehensive plan as to whether or not we've achieved those goals or not, I mean, we can, now they're faced with the problem on how to do that mechanically, and I still am not quite sure how you would go about evaluating, to what degree some of these goals have been achieved or not. I mean, that could be more of a, more of a qualitative than quantitative, but all we have to do is make recommendations. We don't have to come to conclusions.
Right.
But we can make those types of recommendations. But I also think that it's good to make some very concrete recommendations as well, as the more theoretical kind. I mean, the problem with this project is that I don't really know how to gauge the comprehensive plan in an analytical way. I don't know how to read it and make sense of it so that I can say, well, of course, it said we should do this. And I think we haven't done this 75%, but we've done it 25%. I mean, I don't even know how to start with that sort of
Right.
analysis. That may be, Sarah and Neil, that's what we're sort of struggling with.
Right.
We have a comprehensive plan, but we don't, it's really hard analytically to figure out whether or not we've achieved what we should achieve, what we set out to achieve?
Yeah,
or
that's
not?
what Michael and I were just discussing. It would be, for land use, let's just use that as the example, to actually sit down with people in Village Hall, in the building department. How many of these empty buildings in Rye Ridge have turned into restaurant? When did that happen?
Right.
The Blindbrook Club was rezoned R35. That was one of the goals. I know that one was achieved. So it would be, and it goes beyond land use, but every goal that's in there, somebody in Village Hall knows the answer to. And it's just having a person to collect those answers.
Right. And so that's, okay. All right.
Certainly, that could be one of your recommendations, that you think there should
Yeah,
be
get the
a
data.
review
Of the-
of
yeah.
the comprehensive plan to gather the data, what has been accomplished.
But in a more precise way. It's
Yes.
like, do we,
Concrete
if
data.
we, like, if we change the zone,
Right.
how is that,
Gonna-
how is that evolved into something that's positive or negative? If we've,
Right.
implemented a wetland zone in this particular area of the village, what has been, how many complaints or flooding has occurred in that area? I think we have to be more precise in what parts of the plan we
Yeah,
think
I
are
agree.
priorities,
Yeah.
and then ask very specific questions to answer. Otherwise, we're just kicking the can down. Then we're just saying, Board of Trustees, this is what we think you should do, but we're not telling you how to do it.
Right.
And then they're sitting scratching their head like we're scratching our heads. So
But the simple
okay.
common denominator to all of this discussion that we've been having this evening is a one word: zoning.
zoning.
Zoning, right.
One word. Everything comes down to zoning.
And whether or not
Think about it.
No.
And the money, of course.
and-
Second thing is money.
And I think it's the only thing that we can control, because we clearly can't control the budget. It's beyond us. But
We cannot control the rainfall either.
we can't control the rainfall.
Yes.
The only thing we do have control over
We
is
have
the
no
zoning.
control over climate, zero.
No. But we can try to anticipate.
We can mitigate, we may be able to mitigate some of it.
Okay, well, what we'll do is we'll come up with something and circulate it, get your comments, and then we'll,
So
conclude.
now we know what we don't want.
Yes, well, that's as
very
important.
good.
That's
To
important.
me, that's more important
Because
than
you
knowing
can,
what we do
because you
want.
can end up going down
don't
a
want.
very
Knowing what
expensive,
we do not want
dead
to do.
end.
Vote to adjourn or no?
yes,
Through all of this. We
Yes.
want to zero in.
motion,
Motion moved.
aye,
Third,
aye.
Can you believe it's 10 o'clock? I can't believe it.
yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.